Fantastic! Hi, Clint!
The saloon doors creak open. Dust kicks up in the golden light. A silhouette emerges. Tall, slow-moving, still dangerous. At 95 years old, Clint Eastwood doesn't move as fast as he used to, but he doesn't need to. Because when you've been the baddest man in Hollywood for 7 decades, your stare still does most of the talking. And today, Clint's stare isn't aimed at an outlaw or a villain in a black hat. It's aimed at 5 real-life actors who, for one reason or another, found themselves on the wrong end of his legendary glare. Clint Eastwood has built his entire career on not saying much. He's the man with no name, Dirty Harry, the grizzled loner who lets his 6-shooter and death stare do all the explaining. In interviews, he's famously reserved. Short answers, no fluff, no gossip. He doesn't write tell-all books. He doesn't start Twitter feuds. And he sure as hell doesn't spend time airing out dirty laundry for the tabloids. But now, with a lifetime of cinema behind him and the sunset getting mighty close, Clint's finally loosening the holster on some long-held grudges. So what makes this list so special? Because today, we're breaking that silence. And before anyone says, well, maybe it's all just overblown, keep in mind, when Eastwood dislikes someone, he doesn't just dislike them. He erases them. He vanishes them from his world like a pistol shot in the night. No second chances. No public reconciliations. Clint doesn't block people. He buries them in the sand and rides off without looking back. And now, with 95 years of grit under his belt and no time left for politeness, Clint Eastwood has one thing left to say. Let me tell you about the ones I never liked. Number 5, Leonardo DiCaprio.
It is my belief that when a man becomes a part of this bureau, he must so conduct himself as to eliminate even the slightest possibility of criticism as to his conduct.
When Clint Eastwood met Leonardo DiCaprio, it wasn't a match made in cinematic heaven. It was more like a controlled detonation. You had 2 towering forces of film coming face to face, but with completely opposite philosophies. 1, the younger method actor known for meticulous preparation and dozens of takes. The other, a living legend who believes in capturing lightning in a bottle, once and only once. Their showdown took place on the set of J. Edgar, 2011, the biopic about FBI director J. Edgar Hoover. DiCaprio was eager, almost reverent, to work with Clint. He dropped his usual $20 million paycheck down to just $2 million. Not out of desperation, but respect. He'd grown up watching Clint's films. To him, it was an honor. But as Leo would soon learn, Clint doesn't care about reverence. Clint cares about efficiency. Clint Eastwood is famously allergic to second takes. He doesn't yell action, he whispers, whenever you're ready. He doesn't yell cut either. He just grumbles, that's enough of that. And to him, that's gospel. He runs his sets like a quiet, well-oiled machine. No fuss, no chaos, no indulgence. But Leo, a perfectionist by nature, came into J. Edgar wanting to build, refine, and rework every line, every emotion. During one emotional scene, DiCaprio asked for another take, just one more. Not 10, not 20. Just a chance to do it differently. Eastwood's response? Silence. Then he said, without emotion, nope, we're done for the day. Just like that, filming shut down. Everyone went home. Leo, stunned, didn't protest. He just stood there, probably feeling like he'd been pistol whipped by an invisible hand. For DiCaprio, that moment was jarring. For Clint, it was standard practice. Clint believes you capture truth in the first run. After that, it's theater. To Clint, multiple takes are like beating a dead horse, wasteful and self-indulgent. And DiCaprio's request, while respectful, broke the unspoken Eastwood code. Get in, get out, no drama. Behind the scenes, the tension simmered. According to insiders, Leo was frustrated for most of the shoot. He respected Eastwood's legacy, sure, but he couldn't mesh with Clint's rigid directing style. He didn't fight back publicly, but he let it be known privately. He wouldn't work with Eastwood again. On the surface, this feud was quiet. No tabloid meltdowns or TMZ headlines. But make no mistake, it was real. Clint later praised Leo's performance, even though he clearly didn't enjoy the process. And Leo? He walked away with a Golden Globe nomination for J. Edgar, and a vow never to step into Clint's no-nonsense domain again. In many ways, this feud wasn't born from hatred. It was born from incompatibility. Eastwood sees filmmaking as a job, not an art therapy session. DiCaprio sees it as a layered performance that demands excavation.
Is that legal?
Sometimes you need to bend the rules a little in order to keep your country safe.
That difference, as small as it might sound, created an unspoken chasm between them. What makes this entry so Clint is how it ended. Quietly, professionally, and without a single bridge burned in public. But behind closed doors, you can bet your last bullet Clint crossed DiCaprio's name off his call sheet for good. And if Clint were ever asked about Leo again, you can picture him leaning back in his chair, eyes squinting in that iconic Eastwood way, and muttering something like, "Good actor, but once was enough." That's Eastwood code for "we ain't doing this again, kid." So while DiCaprio may be one of the greatest actors of his generation, to Clint, he was just another crew member who didn't follow the rhythm of the set. No screaming match, no long speeches, just a quiet dismissal, like a man putting his revolver back in the holster after one clean shot. One take, one movie, one unspoken grudge. And for Eastwood, that's all he needed. Number 4, Spike Lee.
I'm not saying it. I think for me, the only thing I'm gonna say is it'd be disrespectful to my ancestors.
Now this one didn't happen on a movie set. It happened in the press, at Cannes, and across coastlines. One director taking aim at another with the kind of firepower usually reserved for a final act shootout. In one corner, Clint Eastwood, the old school icon. In the other, Spike Lee, the modern provocateur. And when these two met in the public square, sparks flew like bullets in a saloon. It all began in 2008. Clint had just released his twin World War II epics, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. Two films that, together, offered a panoramic view of one of the war's bloodiest battles. Critics praised their scope. Audiences admired the nuance. But one man had a problem, a very loud, very public problem. At the Cannes Film Festival, Spike Lee, never one to hold back, stood up in front of a room full of reporters and asked a question that would ignite a Hollywood feud. Why weren't there any black soldiers in Eastwood's Iwo Jima films? He wasn't whispering. He wasn't tiptoeing. He was swinging. Clint Eastwood made 2 films about Iwo Jima, Lee said, and there was not one Negro soldier on the screen. He added that black veterans were upset and that Clint's films erased them from history. If there's one thing Clint Eastwood hates more than second takes, it's being called historically dishonest. So he did what Clint does. He squinted, cocked his metaphorical revolver, and fired back. In an interview with The Guardian, Eastwood shot down Lee's criticism with brutal simplicity. The story is Flags of Our Fathers, and black troops didn't do that. He went on, if I put an African-American actor in there, people'd go, this guy's lost his mind. I mean, it's not accurate. Then Clint added a line that instantly went viral. A guy like him should shut his face. Those 7 words hit harder than any .44 Magnum. Now, you'd think Spike might back down, maybe clarify, maybe soften. Nope. This is Spike Lee we're talking about. He came back swinging. In a response to ABC News, Lee quipped, "The man is not my father, and we're not on a plantation. He sounds like an angry old man right there." He even dared Clint to meet real black veterans of Iwo Jima face to face and tell them they didn't exist. The gloves were off. What started as a debate about casting quickly turned into a cultural war. 2 titans of cinema locked in a verbal standoff about race, history, and artistic integrity. Clint, for his part, didn't backtrack. He dug in. He was complaining when I did Bird, too, Eastwood said, referencing his 1988 biopic of Charlie Parker. Why would a white guy be doing that? I was the only guy who made it. He could have gone ahead and made it. Translation? Don't like my movies? Make your own. The feud got so heated that it divided Hollywood. Some rallied behind Spike, applauding his call for representation. Others stood with Clint, defending his commitment to historical accuracy. But here's what's undeniable. It wasn't just a disagreement. It was a clash of ideologies. Spike saw a mission, Clint saw a storytelling restraint, and neither man was about to bling. Eventually, the fire cooled, but the burn marks stayed. They've never worked together, never posed for a smiling awards season photo. Just two towering filmmakers who walked away from the smoke still scowling, and you better believe Clint didn't forget it. So, did Eastwood hate Spike Lee? Hate might be too soft. This wasn't just a grudge, it was a cultural canyon. And once Clint told Spike to shut his face, there was no coming back. In true Western fashion, they holstered their words and rode off in opposite directions. Guns not drawn, but still smoking.
Make the moral choice between love versus hate. Let's do the right thing. You know I had to get that in there.
Number 3. Sandra Locke. Of all Clint Eastwood's infamous feuds, none cuts deeper or darker than the one with Sandra Locke. This wasn't just a professional fallout. It was personal, painful, and dragged out over decades.
Oh, Kane, after all you've done for me, I can't answer your question.
It began as a love story, turned into a courtroom battle, and ended in total war. Sandra Locke wasn't just another actress Clint worked with. She was his partner, on screen and off. They met on the set of The Outlaw Josie Wales in 1975, and sparks flew. Soon, they were living together, a Hollywood couple who made 6 films side by side. On screen, they had chemistry. Off screen, they had what looked like a real romance. But behind the scenes, things weren't so simple. By the late 80s, the fairy tale had curdled. While Locke was off directing her own film, Clint changed the locks on their house. No warning, no goodbye. Just like one of his stone-faced gunslingers, he made his move in silence and left her stunned. Locke later claimed she returned to find herself locked out of her home and relationship all at once. But she didn't just walk away, she fought back. First, she sued for palimony, financial compensation for the years they lived together, but there was a catch. Locke was still technically married to someone else, and that tanked her legal argument. Undeterred, she pivoted and launched a second lawsuit, this time for fraud. That's when the feud exploded. Locke alleged that Eastwood had masterminded a fake development deal at Warner Brothers to appease her. According to court documents, Clint had the studio promise her a directing deal, but the jobs never came. It was all a ruse, she claimed, to keep her quiet and out of the industry. She wasn't just being dumped, she was being erased. Eastwood denied everything, called the accusations baseless, and swore to take it all the way to the Supreme Court. But as the case heated up, Clint blinked. Just before a jury could decide, he settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Locke later said, "I'll never have to work again. I feel vindicated."
Both of you staying in here?
Yes.
Well, not that I mind. I'm not exactly a child anymore. And you're as good as married now.
But the war wasn't over. In 1997, Locke published her memoir, The Good, the Bad, and the Very Ugly, a title clearly aimed at Clint. In it, she described him as controlling, manipulative, and emotionally abusive. She even claimed he pressured her into having 2 abortions. The book wasn't just a tell-all, it was a scorched earth assault. In interviews, Locke made no effort to soften her fury. When asked what she'd do if Eastwood showed up on her set, she deadpanned, "I'd go to my purse, take out my gun, and shoot him in the back of the fucking head." That wasn't a metaphor. That was pure, undiluted rage. Clint, in typical Eastwood fashion, didn't respond. No public rebuttals, no interviews, just silence and lawyers. While he maintained a career of critical acclaim and Oscar nominations, Sandra Locke's acting and directing days were essentially over. Hollywood has never been kind to women who go to war with powerful men, and Locke became a cautionary tale. But here's the thing. No matter how many awards Clint won, no matter how many films he directed after, the ghost of Sandra Locke never really disappeared. Her accusations lingered, her lawsuits left scars, and her book remains a damning portrait of the man behind the camera. In fact, some say that Unforgiven, Clint's 1992 masterpiece about a haunted gunslinger trying to find redemption, was Eastwood's way of confronting his darker side. Did he hate her? Maybe, but more likely, he feared what she could expose. And she did. This wasn't just a breakup. It was a Hollywood horror story, a behind-the-scenes battle more brutal than any Eastwood film. And while Clint never fired back publicly, the silence was telling. He didn't just want her gone, he wanted her forgotten. In the end, Sandra Locke got something Clint rarely gives: the last word. And in a career built on final shots and parting quips, that probably stung more than anything. As she once said, "There's nothing noble about suffering in silence." And Clint? Well, he learned the hard way. Some shootouts leave you bleeding long after the guns are holstered. Number 2, Michael Moore.
Women generally don't shoot you unless you deserve it.
If ever there were two people destined to clash, it's Clint Eastwood and Michael Moore. One's a Hollywood legend known for his grizzled pro-gun cowboy image. The other's a left-wing documentarian who's made a career out of questioning that very image. Their feud was less about personal jabs and more about ideology. America's culture war, distilled into two famous names and one almost threat that went viral. It all began quietly enough. In the early 2000s, Moore was flying high off the success of Bowling for Columbine, a documentary that harshly criticized America's gun culture. Eastwood, a proud Second Amendment supporter and former military man, was never called out by name, but he didn't need to be. His films, characters, and NRA ties made him the very symbol Moore was targeting. Still, Clint didn't say much, not at first. Then came American Sniper in 2014, Eastwood's blockbuster drama about Navy SEAL Chris Kyle. The film was a juggernaut, but also controversial. Critics said it glorified a killer. Supporters said it honored a hero. And then Moore chimed in on Twitter. "We were taught snipers were cowards. Snipers aren't heroes, and invaders are worse." Boom, that tweet lit the fuse. Eastwood, a man who rarely comments on politics outside his films, took it personally. He saw Moore's comment not just as a jab at his movie, but as an insult to the soldier it portrayed and the values he'd upheld for decades. But instead of replying online, Clint waited. And when the two men ended up in the same room months later, Eastwood took the shot verbally. At a CinemaCon luncheon in 2015, Eastwood stood before a room of filmmakers and casually dropped this line. "I know people are saying I was gonna kill Michael Moore, but that's not true." He paused, then deadpan. "It's not a bad idea." The room erupted with laughter and uneasy glances. Was he joking? Was he serious? It didn't matter. Clint had delivered the line like a true gunslinger, and Moore was square in his crosshairs. Later, Clint elaborated. He recalled watching Moore ambush celebrities for his documentaries, like when Moore showed up at Charlton Heston's house uninvited. "I thought if someone came onto your property, you could shoot him," Clint quipped, half serious, half not. Moore, for his part, didn't take it lightly. He wrote on Facebook that he was stunned by Eastwood's comment, saying it sounded like something out of Gran Torino. He wondered whether Eastwood's joke might actually be a threat, and in true Moore fashion, he made sure everyone heard about it. The media pounced. Headlines screamed about Clint's death threat to Moore, whether it was real or not. Pundits weighed in. Memes exploded. And suddenly, the feud between Eastwood and Moore wasn't just Hollywood gossip, it was part of the national conversation. Yet, underneath all the sound bites was a deeper tension. Eastwood and Moore represented opposing views of America. Clint stood for old-school values: honor, duty, masculinity, individualism. Moore represented progressive activism, challenging authority, questioning patriotism, and tearing down myths. Their feud wasn't personal, it was philosophical. And that's why it still resonates. Clint didn't take to Twitter to clarify. He didn't issue a PR statement, he just let his squint and silence do the talking. Moore, ever the provocateur, kept the story alive, reminding his audience that even legends can crack when confronted. But make no mistake,
Get their kids to enlist in the army and go over to Iraq.
Eastwood didn't back down. He made it clear that if Moore ever tried one of his surprise visits, he might find himself on the wrong end of a .44 Magnum. Was it bluster? Maybe. Was it a warning? Absolutely. In the end, the two never worked together, never made amends, and never stopped circling each other from across the ideological street. Their beef remains frozen in time, an uneasy standoff between the old sheriff and the new protester. And if you ask Clint whether he regrets anything, he'd probably lean back, give that dry smile, and mutter, "It wasn't a bad idea." Number 1, John Wayne. If Hollywood had a Mount Rushmore of tough guys, John Wayne and Clint Eastwood would be chiseled in stone side by side, both staring down the world with unwavering resolve. But off-screen, these two titans weren't shaking hands. They were sizing each other up. And behind the scenes, their silent feud was as epic as any Western showdown. It's easy to imagine Clint Eastwood, the cool, laconic anti-hero of the good, the bad, and the ugly, admiring the Duke. In fact, he did.
Stand aside, Martin.
No, you don't, Ethan. Ethan, no, you don't!
Clint grew up idolizing John Wayne. The swagger, the baritone voice, the no-nonsense patriotism. Wayne was the embodiment of the American cowboy, and for a young Eastwood, that was the gold standard. But by the time Clint was blazing his own trail through Hollywood in the 1960s and 70s, he was doing it very differently. Eastwood's spaghetti westerns were gritty, violent, and morally gray. Gone were Wayne's upstanding sheriffs and heroic cavalry officers. In their place, quiet, vengeful strangers who shot first and asked zero questions. John Wayne noticed, and he didn't like what he saw. The breaking point came with High Plains Drifter, 1973. Noble heroes, just pain and consequence. Would Wayne have liked Unforgiven? Probably not. But Clint didn't care. He wasn't chasing the Duke's approval anymore. He was building a legacy that stood apart. Today, the feud between Wayne and Eastwood is etched into film history. Not as a tabloid fight, but as a cultural divide. Two cowboys riding parallel trails. One upholding myth, the other exposing truth. Clint never disrespected Wayne publicly. He always credited him as a pioneer. But when asked about that old letter, Eastwood just shrugged. "I went my own way." And oh, what a way it's been. Clint Eastwood never really cared about smoothing things over. He's never been the type to hold a press conference or tweet a clapback. If something didn't sit right with him, you felt it. On set, in an interview, or maybe just in the way he never called you back. And maybe that's why this list matters. Because even at 95, Clint's not rewriting history. He's not softening with age or pretending it was all water under the bridge. He's the same guy who walked into every room with that calm, don't push it energy, and most of the time, people didn't. Some of these names were once friends, some never had a shot, but all of them left a mark, just maybe not the kind they hoped for. What's clear? Clint still plays by his own rules. Always has, always will. If you stuck around for this whole ride, thank you. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We've got more stories like this coming, and you won't want to miss them. And if Clint's watching, well, we kept it honest, just the way he likes it.